What was it like on the set of Little House on the Prairie? The actress who played Michael Landon's wife says it wasn't as wholesome as it seemed. Little House on the Prairie was more than just a show. It was a piece of television history. Families gathered around their TVs each week to watch the adventures of the Ingalls family. Michael Landon became a household name, and the series won hearts across generations. But now fans are rewatching old episodes and noticing something surprising. And there's one scene that slipped through editing, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. But apart from that, there are more bloopers, behind-the-scenes secrets, and odd little details most people missed. Join us as we dive into the charm, success, and behind the scenes of Little House on the Prairie, as well as that one scene that producers somehow forgot. The beginning of a classic. Little House on the Prairie wasn't just another TV show. It became a part of people's lives. But did you know that before it took over television, it started as a set of books? These were written by Laura Ingalls Wilder and told the story of her childhood in the late 1800s. She and her family lived on a farm near Walnut Grove, Minnesota. The TV show was based on her third book, also titled Little House on the Prairie. In 1972, a television producer named Ed Friendly got the rights to make the show. His wife and daughter had pushed him to do it. That's when he hired Blanche Honolus to write a 2-hour pilot for TV. Then came the big decision. Who would direct it? Ed Friendly asked Michael Landon, who had become famous from Bonanza. Landon agreed, but only if he could play the lead role of Charles Ingalls, too. At first, Friendly and Landon worked together, but soon they didn't see eye to eye. There were creative differences. Eventually, Friendly stepped away, and Landon took over full control. From there, he shaped the show the way he wanted it. The pilot aired in March 1974. Later that year, in September, the full series premiered on NBC. It ran for 9 seasons, ending in May 1982. But even after the show ended, 3 movies were made to continue the story. And the show never really went away. It kept airing in reruns and was picked up by different streaming platforms. Still, the journey wasn't always smooth. When the show first came out, critics didn't love it. Some said it was too sweet, too simple. One critic even joked that Michael Landon looked like he had just come from a beauty salon. Not the Prairie. But viewers disagreed. They loved the show and its honest, warm storytelling. Let's take a closer look at the people who made the show special. The Ingalls and their world. At the heart of Little House on the Prairie was the Ingalls family. They were simple people with strong values. Charles Ingalls, played by Michael Landon, was a farmer and a mill worker. His wife, Caroline, was played by Karen Grassell. Their daughters, Laura, Mary, and Carrie, were played by Melissa Gilbert, Melissa Sue Anderson, and twins Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush. The show mostly focused on Laura, the second daughter. We watched her grow from a little girl to a grown woman. We saw her joys, her struggles, and her love story with Almanzo Wilder, played by Dean Butler. The show was more than just the Ingalls family. It also told stories about their neighbors, friends, and school teachers. It gave us a full picture of life in a small town during the late 1800s. These stories were often emotional, but also full of warmth. One moment that stood out was when Mary went blind in Season 4. It was a turning point. She moved to a school for the blind in Iowa. There she met Adam Kendall, a blind teacher who later became her husband. This part of the show added even more depth and new characters. Another major change came in Season 5. The Ingalls family moved to Winnetka, Minnesota for a while. The economy in Walnut Grove had gotten bad. In Winnetka, they met Albert, an orphan who became like a son to Charles and Caroline. Later, the family moved back to Walnut Grove and took Albert with them. The series also introduced new faces like Eliza Jane and her brother Almanzo. Laura and Almanzo's love story became a central part of the later seasons. By Season 7, Laura even became the town's school teacher, but changes kept coming. A new beginning, new faces. After season 8, Michael Landon decided to leave the show. That's when the series was renamed Little House, A New Beginning. Now, the spotlight shifted to Laura and Almanzo. Charles and Caroline moved away to Iowa. They sold the family house and left it all behind. Laura and Almanzo stayed in Walnut Grove. They took on new roles as parents, teachers, and community members. The show began to explore new themes through them. New families were also brought into the story. John Carter, his wife Sarah, and their 2 sons moved into the old Ingalls house. The show was trying to keep the spirit alive by passing it on to new characters. At the same time, tragedy brought more change. When Almanzo's brother died, he and Laura took in their niece, Jenny Wilder. They raised her along with their daughter, Rose. These additions gave viewers fresh stories to connect with, but many still missed the original cast. While the show changed over time, it held on to its roots. It kept telling stories about love, hardship, and the power of family. And even with new characters, the core feeling of Little House on the Prairie remained the same. But what did the critics say during all this? The reviews, the fans, and the legacy? You see, when the show first aired, not everyone was impressed. One critic from Time magazine mocked Michael Landon's clean looks. Another reviewer said the show was trying to be both an adult drama and a kids' show, and didn't succeed at either. But some people saw the charm from the beginning. A critic from the New York Times said the show had enough warmth to make the Waltons look fancy and spoiled. That was a big compliment, and the audience agreed. Speaking of which, one of the best compliments came from the Christian Science Monitor. It said that watching Little House on the Prairie felt like falling in love with a time, a place, and a way of life. They also called it an astounding, skillful production. By the end of the first season, viewers started to push back against the early negative reviews. People began writing letters to TV Guide, saying they loved the show. One reviewer, Cleveland Amory, even admitted he had been too harsh. After watching it again, he changed his opinion and gave it better reviews. The show kept getting better reviews with time. In 1975, a poll by Scholastic News Time called it the country's favorite show. In 1993, it was named the all-time best family show in a TV Guide readers poll. And even in 2020, the New York Times wrote that the show was perfectly balanced between sweet and sour. Episodes written and directed by Michael Landon were praised the most. According to the BFI companion to the Western, they were some of the finest stories ever made in this style. A book called Favorite Families of TV said the show's success proved that Landon's creative ideas worked. His belief in simple stories, love, and family values connected with people everywhere. And today, the legacy continues. Not just in the stories, but in the scenes that fans are still watching closely. Some are even spotting bloopers that slipped past the editors. Some funny flaws. One of the biggest bloopers happened with Laura's pregnancy. She told everyone she was expecting a baby in late season 7. The weather was warm, flowers were blooming, and the prairie looked beautiful. But then the next summer came, and she was still pregnant. Viewers started to ask, how long is this pregnancy supposed to last? It was clearly an error. It made it look like the writers and the production team weren't working together. Something definitely got mixed up. Speaking of fun facts, did you know that Nellie Oleson's famous blonde curls weren't real? Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie, had to go through a painful process to curl her real hair at first. They used an old curling iron heated in an oven. It was slow and uncomfortable, so they switched to using a wig. To keep it steady, the crew used a metal comb and many hairpins, and even though it was just a wig, it became one of the most remembered looks on the show. But things got even stranger. One of the funniest moments happened in a Season 8 episode called Wave of the Future. In the story, Nellie's restaurant becomes part of a franchise. But the idea doesn't work out. She regrets it and tries to cancel the deal. So she teams up with Charles and Nels to open a new restaurant instead. And that's when the unexpected happened. Colonel Sanders shows up. Yes, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken appears in the episode. He offers Harriet a deal to open a fried chicken franchise. That sounds funny on its own, but here's where it becomes a blooper. Colonel Sanders wasn't even born yet. He was born in 1890, and KFC didn't exist until 1952, but Little House on the Prairie was set in the 1870s and 1880s. That's way before the real Colonel Sanders ever made chicken. So how did he end up in Walnut Grove? It was clearly a mix-up, or just a silly joke that slipped through. Some say the chicken used on the show even came from KFC, so maybe they were just having fun. Still, it makes you wonder what else viewers missed. Speaking of missed detail, there's a scene in Season 3 that shows just how easy it is to forget small things. Cabinets, coats, and costumes that didn't belong. In the episode Little Girl Lost, there's a simple scene where Mary closes a cabinet. But seconds later, when the camera shows Laura, that same cabinet is wide open again. It's a small mistake, but it made some fans laugh. Melissa Gilbert even joked that maybe the house was haunted. It's little errors like this that make rewatches even more entertaining. Then there's the mystery of the missing coats. In the episode Bless All the Dear Children, Laura's baby is kidnapped during Christmas time in Minneapolis. Now, if you know anything about Minnesota winters, you know it gets extremely cold. But in the episode, everyone's walking around without winter coats, as if it's not freezing at all. Melissa Gilbert pointed this out too. The real reason was that the show was filmed in Tucson, Arizona during summer. So the actors were sweating in winter scenes. But did you know that there were some fashion mistakes too? In a few episodes, you can actually spot Caroline's bra showing under her dress. The problem is that back then, bras didn't even exist. In fact, they were invented in 1912. But the show is set in the 1800s, so seeing a bra on screen is definitely a mistake. You can also notice that some women have curled or permed hair, hairstyles that were common in the 1970s, not the 1880s. And many of the men are clean-shaven. But in real history, most men in that time had big beards. Even Charles Ingalls in real life had facial hair. So while the show may have gone for a cleaner look, it didn't match the time period. These styling choices were clearly not accurate. But what about one of the most obvious bloopers? Let's just say it involved a dummy, a train, and a dramatic scene gone slightly wrong. Frogs, dummies, and jokes on set. In Season 5, there's a very intense moment in an episode called The Odyssey. Someone tries to throw Albert off a moving train. Just when it seems too late, Laura jumps in and saves him. It's a serious and emotional scene, but if you look closely, something hilarious happens. As the villain gets thrown off the train, you can clearly see it's not a person. It's a dummy. The dummy falls awkwardly into the grass and doesn't move at all. Then right after, a stuntman rolls down the hill dramatically, making the dummy's fall look even funnier. Fans who noticed this couldn't help but laugh. The editing team clearly didn't catch it in time. And then, of course, there were pranks behind the scenes. Michael Landon was the king of jokes on set. Rachel Greenbush, who played Carrie, shared one story that fans still remember. She and Melissa Gilbert would go to the creek during breaks and catch frogs. Then they'd bring the frogs back and surprise Landon with them. Instead of being grossed out, he'd grab a frog and pop it into his mouth. Then with a grin, he'd walk over to people on set. Right when they least expected it, he'd open his mouth and let the frog jump out. Everyone would scream or laugh. It was his way of keeping the mood fun. He might have been the director and lead actor, but he never missed a chance to prank someone. These little behind-the-scenes moments, mixed with on-screen mistakes, are what make Little House on the Prairie even more interesting today. The show may have had serious themes, but off-camera and even on-screen, things were not always perfect. And that's part of what makes it special. The quilt that traveled and a dangerous first day. Fans who have watched Little House on the Prairie closely may have noticed a funny little detail. The traveling quilt. This same quilt shows up in many different bedrooms throughout the series. It's mostly white with a design that looks like a double wedding ring pattern. You can spot it on Charles and Caroline's bed, the Olsen's bed, and even other characters' beds. Of course, this was likely done to save time and money. But once you see it, you'll keep spotting it again and again. The odd changes don't stop there. The path the Ingalls kids take to school also seems to shift, depending on the episode. Sometimes they cross a bridge. Sometimes they walk past the sawmill. And other times they magically appear from behind it. It's one of those things you don't notice as a kid. But now, it's kind of funny to watch. But not every blooper was harmless. Dean Butler, who played Almanzo Wilder, almost had a terrible accident on his very first day on set. Fresh out of college, he was told to drive a horse wagon downhill for his first scene. He had never driven one before. During the scene, a breeze blew off his hat, and he let go of the reins to grab it. The horses, now out of control, ran straight toward a large oak tree. The crew screamed, and it looked like disaster was about to happen. Luckily, someone managed to stop the horses just in time. Michael Landon decided to do the scene himself after that. Dean later said, "Michael came up to me chewing on a cigarette and said, 'Well, I think I have to double, you know. I can double you, but not replace the horses on the show.'" It was a scary moment, but one Dean never forgot. There were more dramatic turns to come. Some of them never fully explained. Albert's fate and off-camera friendships. You see, Albert Quinn Ingalls, played by Matthew Labiorteaux, became a key part of the show in 1978. He was an orphan adopted by the Ingalls family and quickly became a fan favorite. But his final storyline left many viewers confused. In the 1983 TV movie Look Back to Yesterday, Albert is diagnosed with leukemia. The episode was emotional and hinted that he might die. But did you know that he never actually dies on screen? There's no scene where he passes away, no clear ending to his story. Years later, the actor said in an interview, "He never officially died in the episode, and I think maybe it's kind of left up in the air to debate. It was an unspoken truth. Most people believed he died, but the show never confirmed it. That open ending still leaves fans wondering." While the drama on screen was sometimes heavy, things behind the scenes were a mix of warm friendships and distant relationships. Melissa Sue Anderson, who played Mary Ingalls, was described as cold and aloof by her co-stars. Melissa Gilbert and Allison Arngrim both mentioned this in their autobiographies. They said that Melissa Sue kept to herself and didn't connect with others easily. There were even rumors that her mother was very strict and wanted to protect her too much, which may have made her stay distant. Still, when you look at cast photos, it's hard to imagine any distance between them. They look like one big happy family. But one of the most heartwarming surprises was the friendship between Melissa Gilbert and Allison Arngrim. On the show, their characters Laura and Nellie were enemies, but off-camera, they were the best of friends. They had sleepovers, played pranks on set, and were like real-life sisters. Who would have thought that the show's biggest rivals would become so close? Of course, there were moments on screen that weren't so light-hearted. Grief, guilt, and gaps in the story. One of the most powerful episodes of Little House on the Prairie was called My Ellen. It told the tragic story of a young girl named Ellen Taylor, who drowns while swimming with Laura and Mary. The girls had been skinny dipping and had to hide underwater when some boys came by. Laura and Mary made it back up, but Ellen didn't. After Ellen's death, her mother is filled with grief and anger. During the funeral, she yells at Laura, saying, "You did this!" The scene is heartbreaking. Laura already feels guilty, and now she's being blamed in front of everyone. But what felt strange to many viewers was the silence from the adults around her. Reverend Alden, Doc Baker, and others were there. Yet no one stepped in to defend Laura or comfort her. They just looked at each other, worried, while Laura stood there, crushed and alone. It was a powerful scene, but many felt it was oddly written. Why would all those caring adults stay quiet? The episode showed how deeply the show could dig into human emotion, but it also showed that even the best episodes had moments where the storytelling felt off. And speaking of storytelling gaps, the final movie, A Missing Star, and the Passage of Time. In the final Little House TV movie, The Last Farewell, the show tried to wrap everything up. It was set in the year 1901, and by that time many characters should have looked much older. Charles Ingalls, for example, was close to the end of his real life. He passed away in 1902. The younger characters, Carrie, Jenny, James, Cassandra, Nancy, they should have been adults by then. But in the movie, everyone looked almost the same as they did in earlier seasons. There was very little aging shown, making it seem like time hadn't really passed in Walnut Grove. It was a clear mistake in terms of makeup and continuity. And in real life, Laura and Almanzo had moved to Missouri by then, but the show didn't mention that. One major face missing from The Last Farewell was Catherine McGregor, who played the loud and sassy Harriet Olsen. She had been part of the show for all 9 seasons, so where was she in the final chapter? There are 2 answers. Some reports say she was on a spiritual trip to India after becoming a follower of the Hindu faith. But others believe her absence had more to do with the long-running problem between her and Michael Landon. They had disagreements about her pay and how her character was used in the story. Whatever the reason, her absence was deeply felt by longtime fans. So from flying quilts and changing paths to missing deaths and disappearing stars, Little House on the Prairie was full of small and big surprises. Some planned, and some not at all. When things got personal behind the scenes, Little House on the Prairie looked like a perfect family show on screen. But off-screen, not everything was so calm. One of the most emotional behind-the-scenes stories was about Melissa Gilbert and her close bond with Michael Landon. To her, he was more than a co-star. He was like a second father. But everything changed when she found out he was having an affair. Landon was married to his second wife at the time, but while filming Little House, he began a relationship with Cindy Clarico, a young makeup artist on the show. Melissa remembered seeing them getting close, but she never believed he would cheat. It was nothing untoward, she wrote in her book, but Mike would walk around holding her puppy. Cindy, she added, was stylish and attractive, and the closeness became obvious. The whole cast soon found out, and many were hurt. Melissa Sue Anderson said, "Although we knew he could be difficult at times, we never dreamed he was capable of inflicting that kind of pain on his real family." Gilbert said she had looked up to him, but now she was disappointed. For her, the trust was broken, but Landon also had issues with Karen Grassell, who played Caroline Ingalls. Grassell said the trouble started when she asked for a raise. Landon didn't agree. He said her character wasn't that important and that she should be paid like the younger actors. After that, Grassell felt he treated her badly, leaving her out of scenes and making rude comments. She felt bullied. Luckily, things improved later. Grassell said, "I am very grateful that we mended our fences when talking about reconnecting with Landon before he passed in 1991. Still, the drama on set didn't end with personal fights, fainting fancy costumes, and secret pain. The beautiful costumes from Little House on the Prairie helped bring the 1800s to life. But for the actors, wearing them was not easy, especially during hot days in California. The show was filmed in Simi Valley, where temperatures could go over 100 degrees. Add to that the heavy dresses, boots, tights, and layers. And it was too much for anyone. Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie Olson, shared how tough her first day was. She wore a full costume in the heat and hadn't eaten breakfast. She said, "I started to feel woozy, but I didn't dare say anything." She didn't want people to think she was weak, but it got worse. Her vision blurred, and she blacked out on set. A medic rushed over, revived her, and she somehow managed to finish the shoot. Allison also had to deal with another painful issue: her wig. At first, her wild curls were made using her real hair. She had to sleep in curlers and get her hair styled early every morning. Eventually, they gave her a wig, but it was no relief. The wig had to stay in place for hours. To do that, they used tons of bobby pins and a metal comb. "Yes, it hurt all day," Allison wrote. Some days the comb would cut her scalp. When she touched her head, there were little flecks of blood on her hand. A hairdresser would then clean the cuts with strong astringent. And while actors were sweating in wigs and long sleeves, fans might be surprised to know that some of the stories from Little House weren't even original. Borrowed stories and a producer who walked away. Before Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon had already become a TV star. He played Little Joe on Bonanza for 14 years. But he didn't just act, he also wrote and directed several episodes. And when he started Little House, he brought some of those same ideas with him. Some episodes were almost exact copies. In one Bonanza episode from 1970, called A Matter of Circumstance, Little Joe was badly injured by a horse and tries to survive alone. He even tries to amputate his hand. In the 1976 Little House episode, A Matter of Faith, a similar thing happens. Caroline hurts her leg, and while alone tries to amputate it. Both stories were written by the same writer and directed by the same director. Even the camera angles were alike. Other Little House episodes also took inspiration from Bonanza. One example is Someone Please Love Me, which was based on the Bonanza episode A Dream to Dream. Another Little House episode, He Was Only 12, came from Bonanza's He Was Only 7. Not everyone was happy with these changes. Ed Friendly, the original producer of Little House, wasn't pleased with how the show was shaping up. He said the Ingalls family looked too fancy compared to the original books. He claimed Michael Landon made changes, like giving the kids shoes or moving them into a better house. One NBC executive had even said a sod house was too depressing, so they built a nicer one. Friendly joked, "I've renamed the series How Affluent Is My Prairie. They have everything but a Cadillac." He was so unhappy. He quit before the show even aired, but the show became a hit, and the cast moved forward, shoes and all. While the set had its struggles, sometimes the pressure came from the people. Other times it came from the weather, but the cast pushed through. Cast troubles, tough days, and lasting memories. Even with all the tension and hard work, there was a bond that grew among many cast members. Still, there were days when things got tough. Melissa Gilbert once said the cast felt like a real family. But as we've seen, that didn't mean they always got along. When it came to pain on set, it wasn't just emotional. Actors were also dealing with physical discomfort almost daily, from burning heat to bleeding scalps. Working on Little House wasn't easy, but many of the memories lasted forever. Karen Gressel may have felt hurt at times, but she still chose to make peace with Landon. Melissa Gilbert might have been let down by her father figure, but she still spoke openly about what he meant to her growing up. Little Landon was known for being strong-willed and in control, and even though some of his choices were questioned, he kept the show moving. He believed in it. Whether it was borrowing stories from Bonanza or battling producers over shoes and houses, he stood by his vision. Behind the smiles, hugs, and heartwarming lessons we saw on TV, Little House on the Prairie was a place of hard work, hidden drama, and unforgettable stories. Which behind-the-scenes moment from Little House on the Prairie surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history.